Hello dear students, welcome. So in the previous video we saw how the jail authorities had taken all the precautions so that Evans doesn't get any chance to escape. Jackson came for the final appearance and he wished him good luck. In the little lodge is a very small room just inside the prison's main gates. The Reverend respected S. McCleary signed his name neatly in the visitor's book, and thence means from there, walked side by side with the silent prison officer across the exercise yard to D wing. So now McCleary reached the prison main gates. There he signed in the visitor's book, and then he came with the silent prison officers to D wing. D wing is the wing where there is the cell of Evans, where he was greeted by Mr. Jackson. So at D wing entry point, he was welcomed by Jackson. The wing's heavy outer door was unlocked and locked behind them. The heavy inner door the same, and McCleary was handed into Stephen's keeping. So Jackson took him, and two doors were locked and unlocked, and then now Evans was with Stephens. Get the razor, murmured Jackson. Get the razor, because he remembered that Evans was having the razor because he was shaving. Stephens nodded. Well, keep your eyes skinned, sharp. Clear? Stephens nodded again, because inside it was Stephens' duty to check on everything, but outside the D wing on the main point there was Jackson on duty. And McCleary, his feet clenching, making sound up the iron stairs, followed his new guide. Now his new guide was Stephens, and finally stood before a cell door where Stephens opened the peephole and looked through. So this was a cell door which was covered with iron sheet completely, and there was only a peephole to look inside. That's him, sir, Stephens said, pointed towards Evans in the cell, and told this to McCleary that it was Evans. Evans, who was facing the door, sat quietly at the farther of the two tables, his whole attention riveted, centered to a textbook of elementary German grammar. So he was doing that last minute revision. Stephens took the key from its ring, and the cell lock sprang back with a thudded, heavy, metallic of metal twang sound. So the lock was opened. It was 9:10 a.m. when the governor switched on the receiver. He had instructed Jackson to tell Evans of the temporary little precaution that was the microphone. That was only fair. So governor was also a nice-hearted person. He wanted Jackson to tell McCleary that they were having a microphone in his cell. But Evans had already noticed it. As if Evans would not spot it. Evans had already spotted it. But wasn't it all a bit theatrical? It was like overdoing the things. Theater, where there is very much drama and over of everything. So that is why it is compared with this. Schoolboyish almost. How on earth was Evans going to try anything on today? Jackson is thinking that on earth Evans cannot try to escape today, because today everybody was on alert. If he was so anxious, worried to make another break, why in heaven's name hadn't he tried it from the recreational block? For 8 months he was having the evening classes, tuitions for German language, and he could try it in that period. But why was he waiting for this day where everybody was on alert and there was high security? So Jackson thought that he would not try. Much easier it was to escape from recreational block. Now he is in D wing, and there are 4 main heavy doors to escape. But he hadn't, and there he was now sitting in a locked cell, all the prison officers on the alert, 2 more locked doors between his cell and the yard, and a yard with a wall as high as a haystack. So from his cell to the main gate there are 2 more locked doors, and if he is successful to come out of these 2 locked doors, he will have to jump from a very high wall that is compared with a haystack. Haystack को आप कितना मर्जी tall बना सकते हो. So the wall is compared with that. Yes, Evans was as safe as houses. The safest place for anyone to live is house. So that is the reason It is said that this cell today was as safe for Evans as houses. Anyway, it wouldn't be any trouble at all to have the receiver turned on for the next couple of hours or so. General thought that he would have to switch on the receiver to listen to the conversation between McCleary and everything. It wasn't as if there was going to be anything to listen to, because McCleary was all alone. He would not talk to anyone. So there is not going to listen to anything, was it? Amongst other things, an invigilator's duty was to ensure the strictest silence was observed. This is an invigilator's duty. But still, that little nagging doubt, but still General had that irritating doubt in his mind that Evans could try anything. So that is the reason he was having the microphone or the receiver on. Get him to smuggle to bring something illegally. In a chisel is a kind of iron tool, construction के time पे use करते हैं, it's very heavy. Or two, or a rope ladder, maybe that he has somewhere convinced McCleary to bring some sharp object, because each and every sharp object from his cell is taken away, his razor, nail scissors, nail file, everything. So now General is having again a doubt that maybe McCleary is having something sharp. Then the next step. The governor sat up sharply. It was all very well getting rid of any potential weapon that Evans could have used. But what about McCleary? If for Evans everything was checked, no sharp object was there with him. But what about McCleary? What if quite unwittingly, unknowingly, unintentionally, the innocent McCleary had brought in something himself? Maybe he has something sharp with him unknowingly. A jackknife, perhaps? And what if Evans held him hostage? Hostage means when you take the support or kidnap somebody, or you just want the people to do something on the gunpoint with such a weapon. So if Evans would use McCleary, that he would be having him and warning everybody that he would kill McCleary and he would run away. So he could use McCleary in that way. The governor reached for the phone. It was 9:12, because now he was having the idea in his mind that McCleary's suitcase should also be checked. Evans was not having anything, but if unknowingly McCleary was having anything, it would be a trouble not only for McCleary but for everyone. So now he called at 9:12. The examinee and examiner. Okay. Examinee is Evans, examiner or invigilator is McCleary. Had already been introduced by Stephens when Jackson came back and shouted to McCleary through the cell door. So Stephens had introduced this Evans and the invigilator, and then Jackson called him out of the cell door. Can you come outside a minute, sir? You too, Stephens. So he called both of them out of the cell door. Jackson quickly explained the governor's worries, and McCleary patiently held out his arms. Held out arms means to hold the arms at shoulder level, means you are just agreeing that the person in front of you can search you if he wants. At shoulder level, while Jackson lightly frisked his clothes, Jackson searched his clothes. Something hard here, sir. There was something hard in his clothes. My reading glasses, he said, replied McCleary, looking down at the spectacle case. Jackson quickly reassured him that okay, and bending down on the landing, thumb flicked the catches on the suitcase. These were the suitcases in all traditional way, which are thumb flicked. You'll have to press them with the help of the thumb, and the suitcase was open. He picked up each envelope in turn, carefully passed his palms along their surfaces, okay, on the front and the back side. He just searched it with the help of his palm. He did not open every envelope and seemed satisfied. He searched cursorily through a few pages of Holy Writ. Okay, cursorily means just you can say had a glance of the Holy Writ, means that is the Bible, and vaguely, clearly shook the church times. All right, so far everything was right. There was no sharp object, but one of the objects in McCleary's suitcase was puzzling him sorely, completely. One thing was there which was making him confused. Jackson, confused. Do you mind telling me why you have brought this, sir? So there was one object, and Jackson asked, sir, why have you brought this? And what was it? It was, he held up a smallish, semi-inflated rubber ring, such as a young child with a waist of about 12 inches might have struggled into. So he was having a semi-inflated rubber ring. Okay, you must have seen some people who do not learn how, do not know how to swim. They put this kind of tube on their waist, and then they are able to learn swimming. So this kind of a semi-inflated rubber ring was there, but it was very small. And he just cracked a joke. Jackson, he said, you thinking of going for a swim, sir? Because that tube was not going to be fit into uh, McLeary's waist. Still he asked this question. What happened? McLeary's hitherto means till then, amiable, pleasant demeanor, behavior was slightly ruffled, upset by this tasteless little pleasantry joke. So by now, McLeary was all okay. He was also in a good mood. But after Jackson's this joke, when he asked, are you going for a swim, sir? McLeary suddenly got upset. And he answered Jackson somewhat sourly, bitterly. If you must know, I suffer from hemorrhoids. And when I'm sitting down for any length of time, so he was suffering from hemorrhoids, kind of a piles disease. So he could not sit for a longer time. That is why he was having a tube so that he could sit on that. Very sorry, sir, I didn't mean to. Jackson noticed that McLeary was very upset, so he apologized. He said, very sorry, sir, I didn't mean to hurt you. The embarrassment was still reddening Jackson's cheeks. He was very embarrassed at making a joke like that. When he found the paper knife at the bottom of the case, now he found the second object which was problematic. That was a paper knife. Paper knife is very common for an invigilator, okay, to cut the seal of the envelope and question paper and all. I think I would better keep this though. But Jackson did not allow him to take that paper knife inside, and he kept it with him. If you don't mind, that is, sir. It was 9:18 a.m. before the paper was about to start at 9:15. It was 9:18 a.m. before the governor heard their voices again, and it was clear that the examination was going to be more than a little late in getting underway. So the examination was going to be started, but a little late. And now some confusing terms. The students generally get confused. So the first pair is that and which. That is used to indicate a specific object, item, person, condition. Like, she was driving the van that had German plates. Which is used to add information to object, items, people, or situation. Like, they got into the van which had German plates. Now the sentence is the same, but when we are using which, we have used comma. And generally you must keep in mind, when you are using that, you do not need to put a comma. You can write it in a single sentence. Very and to. Very has a positive or a negative meaning. It comes after the indefinite article like the tea is very hot to drink. Okay. To is generally used to indicate something very negative. It's too cold out to play, means it's very cold, we cannot play. It always comes in negative sense. Fun and funny. When you enjoy yourself and have a good time. A theme park is fun because you enjoy yourself. Like, the roller coaster ride was fun. But funny means a person or thing that makes you laugh. Like, a joker is funny as his jokes makes you laugh, or his jokes are funny. So when a person or thing makes you laugh, then it is funny, but when you enjoy yourself, then it is fun. Who and whom. Who is a subject to a verb, like who was calling me. Okay. Who's your best friend. Whom is always an object in a sentence, like from whom did you get my number. You is the subject, from whom is the object. So whom always comes like in an object form. Okay, so revise all these kind of confusing terms, read the text, and have a good day.